Alright, let's have a whole class conversation. Let's complain. We don't know how to do this, but then Mr. Kane wants to teach us how to do it, and then we still want to complain. Right, Kyson? Okay. It's not multiple choice. I cannot make them clear. Hold on to it. Alright. So, I need y'all to remember, there are key mathematical words always buried within the questions. It's not next to the number 1, but above that, what key word should have told us exactly what to do? Divide, right? There was that key word of division. Because how much road is there? 2 miles, right? And what we want to know is, how much road will each volunteer have? Now, 2 quick things. 1, do not just write, put it away. This is not dice class.
You lost.
So, do not just write a final answer. If you just write the final answer, and that's just a number, 1, you're missing the whole context of the problem. 2, did you say it's hot?
Ooh, tripping.
So here's the thing. Stop. Some people are warm, some people are cold. You gotta get used to it. We got 30 minutes to go. Get over it.
How big, you know? You tripping.
I feel comfortable. Alright. There's that key word of divide. Make sure that you show your work. If you don't show your work, you're going to miss out on key details. Also, I need y'all to understand me very clearly on this. Stop doing this. Okay?
That's what I said.
That division is division, yes. In an algebra class, a geometry class, basically anything past middle school and really, honestly, elementary school, that division symbol is not going to be as useful. How are we going to show division?
Fraction.
Not a slash. Fraction. Okay.
I knew that.
So, I saw a lot of people, right, do this, 2 divided by 8. Okay? That's awesome. However, I also saw a lot of people that didn't put 2 divided by 8, they just wrote 1/4.
A quarter.
Which is a quarter, okay? They just wrote a fourth. Do not just write a final answer. Where did that 1/4 come from?
2 8s.
2 8s, right? So write the 2 8s there. What does this 2 8s mean though?
You divided by 8 by 2.
2 miles divided by your volunteers.
Alright, 2 miles split up or divided out by those 8 volunteers. That's it. 2 miles split up over 8 volunteers. Now, I saw a lot of people, and I need you to make this note to yourself somewhere. So a lot of people do this, 8 divided by 2. Which makes sense. Is it still division?
Yes.
Yes. But when you do 8 divided by 2, you're getting what number? 4. Why does that number not make sense? That's bigger than 2, right?
Yeah. It's like
It's only supposed to be 2 miles total, so how is each volunteer doing 4 miles? That's not possible, is it?
Nope.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Here's the next thing. I don't know if you did this in middle school at all, but I want you to start doing it here. And the faster you start doing this, the easier your life will become. This is 8 what?
People.
People or volunteers, right? Split up over 2
miles.
Do you know what these are called? Those are the what for those numbers? Say again? Those are the units. The units are what we are measuring by. Because when we're talking about distance, you can use miles short, but what else could you use? Yards. What else? Inches, feet, kilometers, centimeters, meters. Right? There's so many different things that 8 could mean. Or that 2 could mean, I'm sorry. And so we don't just want to put a number. These numbers are representing things in the real world. So it's 8 volunteers divided by 2 miles. But notice if you do that, that's telling me 4 volunteers, notice that's the numerator, per what? Did they ask how many volunteers were working on each mile?
No.
No.
No. When you use your units, it makes more sense. Here it's 2 miles per 8 volunteers.
Yes.
So it's a quarter of a
No.
mile per
Volunteer.
volunteer. Is that the question that they were asking?
Yes.
Yes.
Pay attention to your units. Just paying attention to units will save you a lot of headache. I think I mentioned this before in this class. My undergraduate degree was in civil engineering. The number one thing that got through me civil engineering classes, or engineering classes in general, was paying attention to units. If you learn how to pay attention to units and make sure that they cancel out correctly or work out correctly, math and science become significantly easier. We wanted miles per volunteer. I now have that. But notice, like, you can see it right here very quickly of, hey, that doesn't make sense. So pay attention to your final answers, see if they make sense. So in a similar way, 10 volunteers, 2 miles per 10 volunteers is equal to a fifth of a mile per volunteer. 2 miles divided by 25 volunteers. Do you notice how I'm writing my initial idea every single time? Right? I'm writing it out. And when I then divide this, and I think I heard someone ask this earlier, Mr. Kinney, can we do decimals or fractions? The answer is
Yes.
both are fine. Okay, I've done it as a fraction so far, but you can very easily say 0.25 miles per volunteer, 0.2, and here decimals may actually even be better than fractions, because can you simplify that fraction at all?
No.
No. You would either need to leave it as 2/25ths of a mile per volunteer, which that doesn't mean a ton to me, or I think, was it 0.08 miles per volunteer? Okay? And the final one is 2 miles divided by 36 volunteers equal to 1/18. What was that as a decimal?
0.055. Repeated.
Was the 5 repeated for forever?
No, the six. Wait.
Was it 0.055556 at the end? Okay, that 6 is because the 5 rounded up. Does that make sense? So it really is 0.05 repeating miles per volunteer. So,
You got it.
that's it. And I want you to notice, here is why you should write out the beginning every single time.
Wow.
Look at each of the original expressions. Is anything staying the same?
The 2 on top.
The 2 on top?
2 miles.
Oh, okay, cool. The 2 on the top is staying the same. And then I'm dividing. That thing, is it staying the same?
No.
It is
Different. Oh.
different or changing or varying, so I need a, say it louder, a variable, right? Notice the 2 wasn't changing, so it stays as 2. Would you have ever seen that if it was 1/4, 1/5, 2/25ths, 1/18th, or just those decimals? You never would have seen that. That's the whole point, is when you write out some of the work, and you show those initial steps, it might help you. So it was 2 divided by, what are we going to use to represent the volunteers?
VO.
So you don't want to do like VOL, that was the units, right? Where are you getting, I heard N from several people. Where are we getting N from?
That's
Volunteers, every volunteer.
Number of volunteers, but more importantly, say it again, Kelsey.
It's in the problem.
It's in the problem, right? Look at number 2. Write an equation that would make it easy to find L, the length of a road section of miles, for each volunteer if there are how many volunteers? Nope. N volunteers. Not a lot. A variable number. We don't know how many. So 2 divided by N equals. It needs to be an equation. What does it equal?
People.
Not people.
Volunteer.
L.
Yeah.
Oh, length.
I knew.
What were we calculating every single time?
Nah.
The miles per volunteer. That's a length that each volunteer was calculating, or was cleaning. Notice L, the length of a road section in miles for each volunteer. right? They're defining a lot of that for us. Now, have we written an equation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. What would this equation help us calculate?
The miles.
The
and
length.
years.
So this is going to help us calculate the length. So useful for calculating length of road for volunteers, for each volunteer. But here's the thing, I got a question for you. Is it possible that I already know the length of road I want each volunteer to do, and I need to know how many volunteers that's for?
Yeah.
Yeah, do I want to use this equation to find the number of volunteers based on the length?
Yes.
Remember, this is easy, because I was just able to do 2 divided by n every time. In the case I'm presenting, like let's say that I want each volunteer to have half a mile of road. Is that equation easy to work with? That's as easy as just 2 divided by something?
Yeah.
Wait,
No, wait. Say it again.
So like here, if I had 10 volunteers, all I had to do is 2 divided by 10, correct? What's easier, to do 2 divided by 10, or to now have to solve this equation?
Solve the equation. Solve the equation.
This is easier than just 2 divided by 10?
No.
No, definitely not, y'all. My point is this. If you think back to the objectives, it is important to know when one form of an equation is more useful than another. This is useful for solving for the length. This is not useful for solving for the number of volunteers. So what I want you to do is think about this equation. And here it says find the number of volunteers in the group if each volunteer cleans up a section of the following lengths. So if each volunteer has 0.4 miles, how many volunteers are there? That's what we're asking. So how many volunteers are there? Okay, so if each person has 0.4 miles to clean up, how many volunteers are there? Think about this equation. It's not going to be exactly the same, but it's going to be very similar. Work with each other. It's a puzzle. Play around with it. How can we figure out the number of volunteers that there were? And here's a quick hint. Can you have half of a volunteer?
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Let's cut them in half.
Even if you cut them in half, they're either a person or they're not. And I
They
hope
did,
they're
they
not. They're either alive or they're dead, right?
They did.
So can you have half of a volunteer?
Actually, yes.
So if you ever get a part of a volunteer, have you done it correctly? No. Play around, because it's still 2 miles of road total. We're trying to figure out how many volunteers there needs to be so that each volunteer has 0.4 miles of road. Play around with it, get to work. Let's see if we can figure out how to approach this problem. It should be the same for every part of this.